Welcome aboard the National Geographic Sea Lion. This will be our home that will bring us on our remarkable journey from Alaska to Haida Gwaii and through British Columbia. We will be exploring the forests on foot. We will be exploring our coastline via kayak and Zodiac. We are hoping to see some of the iconic wildlife of this region. We will have the unique opportunity to visit some of the native cultures that make this area their home. This is going to be a true exploration. We never know what we're going to see. This is going to be an amazing trip. Welcome aboard.
What an amazing first day of our voyage. We've had rainbows, sunshine, pouring down rain, but what was really spectacular was to start the day with bubble net feeding humpback whales. We followed a series of whales breaching, tail lobbing, breathing, everything was so beautiful, and then found a lovely group of, I believe it was 8 humpback whales cooperative feeding, and had tremendous sights in the rain, beautiful light for photography, of watching these whales bubble net feed. This afternoon, we have dropped the Zodiacs and we are about to do one of the staff's favorite places to do Zodiac tours. We're in the Indian Islands this afternoon, and we are at the most northern reach of the incoming tides for Southeast Alaska. All of that 20 to 26 feet of water every 6 hours goes in and goes out through this tiny little network of islands. Tremendous things can happen on those tides. Probably the most wonderful thing that we get to see are stellar sea lions, and they are the largest pinniped in North America. The males can get somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 pounds. So males are hauled out fighting for territory and roaring. Stellar sea lions roar, and the sound of that roar over the sea is beautiful. So this is an annual plant, everyone. An annual plant. It can grow as much as 180 feet in 1 year. That bulb is full of carbon monoxide. That's how it floats to the top. Large, giant Pacific kelp beds afford a beautiful place for sea otters to hang and be safe with their young.
And the little mama otter was on her back with the little baby on her tummy and petting it and just swimming along with one little flipper right by the front of the boat. It was just the cutest thing you ever saw in your life. It was just perfect.
It is the first day of our expedition, and we have had an extraordinary wildlife experience.
Glacier Bay National Park never fails to surprise and delight us. We came in just after midnight, drove through fog all night long, and awoke this morning at a special place called Russell Cut, a narrow channel behind Russell Island. We found a bear on the beach who had just swum across the channel. We followed it for a long time. I don't know what it was looking for, but it didn't seem to be bothered by us. We moved north to the most northern part of our trip and spent some time with the beautiful Marjorie Glacier, although we all know that the bay was cut by the much more massive and now quite flattened Grand Pacific Glacier. Although the center has retreated quite a bit, in all, Marjorie Glacier is fairly stable. After lunch, we turned and headed down bay, stopped at the magnificent Gloomy Knob, where we managed to find some mountain goats despite some rain. Marble Island is an amazing seabird colony. There were 40 or 50 tufted puffins in the air and in the water, and some still near their burrows. And just as we were departing Marble Island, someone saw the giant dorsal fin of a male killer whale. We began our day with glaciers and scoured rocks free of vegetation, and as we progress, we've been able to watch how the plant community has returned, the animal communities, how the nesting birds have colonized these places, and how it has changed so much. We'll end our day in Bartlett Cove, walking through rainforest that only 250 years ago was bare rock.
So we're here in Tracy Arm, which is one of my absolute favorite places of not just Southeast Alaska, but the entire world. And you can see why it's so interesting to me here, because it's like a float trip into Yosemite Valley. You've got sheer granite cliffs, you've got water body from the sea extending all the way in here. It's a fjord, which is just a glacially carved valley that is flooded by the sea. You've got side valleys, hanging valleys, glacier carved features, striations, and everything galore, including the waterfalls that are all coming down. And then at the very far end of Tracy Arm, you've got the glaciers that actually carved out this fjord. What's not to love about this? It's just gorgeous here. The clouds are lifting. We've got a beautiful day here to explore South Sawyer Glacier in Tracy Arm. So we're here, and our activity for this afternoon here in Tracy Arm is to go and visit the South Sawyer Glacier, which is actively calving right now. Oh my God, I just heard it. So yes, we're gonna go up and explore a lot closer to the glacier, come face to face with the South Sawyer Glacier. And what a glacier is, it's an area that is flowing down from the high mountains in the high alpine areas where all the snow accumulates, layer after layer after layer after layer, compressing down previous snowfall into glacial ice, which then flows out of the ice field and then comes many miles out from the area where it first fell as snow out to where it calves into the sea. What's really spectacular about coming in here is that every single iceberg is different. It's got different shape, different color. A lot of it is really blue, meaning that it's coming from the very bottom, the belly of the glacier, and comes up and floats. And they're just so spectacular, all these different icebergs here. So gorgeous examples of glacial ice. And one of the things about the glacial ice, the proverbial tip of the iceberg is so true. Only 10% sticks up above the surface and 90% is below. And to give you an example of that, I have 10 fingers, stack those right on top of one another. My thumb on the very top is the only part we can see. 10% above and 90% below the water. And sometimes, as they melt, they roll, they tip. It's just amazing to be surrounded by all this ice.
This community, Petersburg, was founded by Peter Bushman, a Norwegian fellow. If you look behind you, there's the Sons of Norway Hall. So Peter Bushman founded this community. It was historically a Tlingit fishing area, so even indigenous ties to this country, or to this specific land, have to do with fish. But Petersburg is a very interesting story. They have the LeConte Glacier. So we were yesterday at South Sawyer Glacier and Tracy Arm. But if we were to take that aerial view on this Taquine ice field and go down a little bit, the LeConte Glacier is the furthest south tidewater glacier in that same ice field. That packing and ice and the fish and the transport, that is how this town kind of got its start. The fishermen actually have a cooperative here. They own the fish packing plants, they own the distribution. So Petersburg also has, at one point it had the highest per capita amount of millionaires in the US just because of how the fishing permits had been regulated. People owned what they were catching. Those are different elements. We've seen the fishing, we've seen the ice, we've seen the Norwegian influence, and then we can kind of think about what other images help to tell that story as we continue on our photo walk today. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work before you show up as a photographer, because you need to know what's important and distinct and unique about the community or the story that you're telling. So that's just a little bit of the background to kind of place you and where we are and what sorts of elements or themes we might be looking for to keep on with that story. Today, after leaving Petersburg, we passed through the Wrangell Narrows, and then just south of there in Snow Pass, we had this incredible opportunity. We saw killer whales. We turned the boat around and we were able to spend some time with them. It was a large group, whales just on every side of the boat, and they were breaching and tail slapping. And it was just magical to watch them swim through these waters right at dusk, and also an incredible photographic opportunity.
We're here today in Misty Fjords National Monument, which is just a beautiful expanse of wilderness. Glacially carved, these are all fjords, interconnected. The ice in this area was about a mile thick, overran almost everything that we can see around us and created all these lovely inlets and passageways in between these different bodies of salt water. This is a really cool Zodiac ride because we're being let off. The ship is not anchored and we're just getting onto Zodiacs, and we're gonna cruise around a little bit and watch the ship come through the narrowest part of this passageway. It's called Owl Pass. It's only about 70 yards wide and 70 yards deep. It's really narrow and spectacular. I'm gonna watch the ship come right through it. Oh, fabulous today.
We can almost hear the drums beating, the drums that set the paddlers in motion as we travel the same waterways that the people that populated this region originally traveled as well. As you're looking into the reflections along the edges of these fjords, perhaps you too might feel those canoes and those drums moving all these hundreds of miles through the Pacific Northwest, gathering together at feasts, visiting their relatives, moving much the same way we are over the water from village to village.
For the second part of our journey, after leaving Alaska, we come into British Columbia, and one of the beauties about the second half of the trip is visiting Indigenous people. Our first stop in Prince Rupert will be in the territory of the Tsimshian people. And then we will make a journey between 40 and 60 miles across Hecate Strait, and we will be in the traditional land of the Haida people, in an archipelago called Haida Gwaii.
Today we're on Haida Gwaii and we're walking through the temperate rainforest. It's very lush. There's over 200 inches of rain that feed this forest. It's full of western hemlock, Sitka spruce, big leaf maple, red alder, and we've been learning about many of the medicinal uses of these plants from Linda, our guide here.
NGSeaLion. U is the trail. It's also a word that could be used for a ladder. It could be used for an ear. And so it's a multiple use word. But it's how you spell it and how you say it. They're completely different. Like I could say, I love you in Haida, was Dangandi Ugaga. If you say Kugaga, you'll be cooking the person. You wouldn't be loving the person. So the alder was once a woman, so before you fall that tree, you hug it so that it won't fall on you. She was once a woman. And so the uses for the alder is a dye. You'd get a red dye from the bark. But that one is the spiny wood. And the spiny wood, the roots, my mom said they were eaten in the past, and they taste like a sweet potato. So they are edible.
And we have the sound of the stream flowing. We've got bird calls going of our resident bird species like the Pacific wren. And just beautiful lush forest. And this temperate rainforest is part of the biome that stretches all the way from Northern California up through the coast of Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and all the way up to Sitka and north from where we started our journey in Southeast Alaska. All part of the same rich biome that we call the Pacific Northwest temperate rainforest.
This morning we woke up in rolly seas in one of the southwest corners of the archipelago on a tiny little island in a UNESCO World Heritage Site called Skungwai, where mortuary poles are standing in situ. They were carved in the 1880s, and they've been allowed to stand since then, and a program called The Watchman has been developed in Haida Gwaii, and a group of people are assigned to each one of the traditional Haida sites to watch and take care of the traditional pieces that are still left standing.
So pre-contact, you would actually just make a big totem pole like this, and then at the top you would add a bentwood box, and then you would put your relative inside of there, and then you would raise it and your relative would still be living with you.
Oh, okay.
We didn't really like to put our relatives in the ground, so we always just put them in mortuary poles so that they could stay with us.
Many people have a visit to Skungwai on their bucket list. It is very, very special to all indigenous people across North America. But for many people who watch what happens with UNESCO, it becomes a place that they really, really need to visit. It's full of magic. It has so much history. And the Watchmen walk us through very carefully, telling the stories passed to them from their ancestors, their grannies, their grandpas, their aunties, their uncles. and we get to revisit this place so important to the Haida.
You can see there are remnants of a salmon cannery all over there. In the early 2000s, there was an attempt to revitalize the cannery, but it failed. So we'll see. We'll see what history has in store. I'm choosing my phone right now because it has a wide angle on it, and I needed that wide angle. And also for the moving water, we can use the live effect and do that long exposure feature on there for the waterfall without having to use a tripod, which is really, really helpful, especially on a Zodiac. Also, for those of you that were shooting with DSLRs yesterday, don't forget we were in a very different environment. So change your ISOs back to a higher ISO in order to, oh, I think I saw some wildlife in that. I saw a little head pop up. Yeah, there it was. Harbor seal? When we started our trip, we had a forest dominated by Sitka spruce and, not yet, far north, western hemlock. So as we've been coming south, we had introduced the red cedar and the yellow cedar, which we're seeing a lot more of now. So obviously birds in flight is one of the hardest things to photograph. So sometimes you'll see me on the bow just photographing seagulls for hours, and that's all just practice, repetition, because then when you come across a species that you're really more excited about or that's more rare, you've trained yourself. So really so much of photography is just practice and repetition. When we get into the Zodiacs and we start exploring the coastline and get up close and personal, we never know what's going to be around the next corner. It's all about the spirit of discovery.
It was just a fun day of adventure and going out and looking for this wildlife that was out there.
I hope you've warmed up and hung your rain gear somewhere and filled your notebooks and your minds with happy thoughts of this beautiful place. I see our usual fruits and cheeses and chicken sauté with a peanut sauce. So you'll want to join us for that. We've got a full lineup for a recap and look forward to sharing some stories with you in about a half hour.
So if your back is to the totem poles, this is just to your left. So after it went down a little bit, I took a camera and went over there, and I actually was intending on flying the ROV underwater and getting some footage there. And then this looks so beautiful, and I was like, oh, let me shoot around and see what's kind of sitting inside of here. And just below the surface, there's actually quite a bit of life just sitting in these little tidal pools. So I haven't seen a lot of sea stars yet. These are bat sea stars, or also known as sea bats. They're kind of amazing. They get to be about 10 inches long. And I think I told you guys a little bit about how these the sea stars, the echinoderms, they have tube feet and they can push their stomach out through their tube feet. Well, the bat stars, they kind of do that all the time. And just right next to these guys, look at this beautiful little guy. Now, I know we've been talking a bit about cnidarians. Here's a new species to our collection of anemones. This is a green surf anemone. So these will be found frequently in these intertidal zones. Now, this is one of the largest specimens I've ever seen because they can get to be about 1 foot by 1 foot. But they exist in an area that can kind of be dried out. Sometimes you'll see them on the side of rocks and they'll completely pull themselves in. This one's in the process of doing so because of the sun. But you'll see them as little mushy blobs on rock when they're completely closed out of the water and in the sunshine. It's really kind of an incredible species that it can survive that way. You can see it's got its oral disc there in the middle. It's a good shot of its lips. You can see these arms, you know, so photographers, what? Anyway.
Very much, sir.
And here's Dana for a word real quick.
So tomorrow at some point I will go over what we're doing tomorrow in a nutshell. There will be there will be shopping. There will be adventure. There will be Linda's program. Yeah, a little bit of exploration, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I'll go over in more detail in the morning. All right, in the meantime, dining room doors are open. Enjoy your dinner.
We are on a photo expedition going through Southeast Alaska, British Columbia, and Haida Gwaii. What's really remarkable about this photography expedition is all the different terrain we're able to cover and photograph. So we're in the glaciers, we're in the temperate rainforest, we get to go into tiny little islands and poke around with our cameras. We also get to interact with local residents and see what's going on in the fishing villages, as well as explore indigenous cultures and sacred sites to them. This expedition is great because we have so much time to work through different challenges and opportunities, and we get the time to work with each guest's individual cameras, all different types of cameras, from phones to DSLRs. This is a really special voyage that we're only able to do a couple times a year. It's been amazing.
For the last 2 days, we've been in the community of Alert Bay, and this is the home of the Kwakwaka'wakw people and the Numgeese, which is a beautiful portion of the Kwakwaka'wakw people who call this place their home. We're here at the Umista Cultural Center, and it is a very significant cultural center and museum housing a very famous collection of potlatch regalia taken from a Cranmer family potlatch on Village Island by the Canadian government in 1920. After visiting the Umista Cultural Center, the next stop on our morning will be at the Big House, the traditional big house of the Kwakwaka'wakw people, and we're going to have a chance to actually experience what it's like to be at a potlatch.
We want to thank you for making this journey with us. It has been incredible from day one. We have seen some spectacular wildlife. The scenery has been incredible. We've got to meet some incredible people along the way. Thank you for experiencing this trip with us. It's been incredible, and we hope to see you again on one of our ships somewhere in the world.